So this morning I had the thought, how can I make some low effort videos when there aren't games going on for tournaments right now, or like not too many? There will be soon, but I wanted to fill out the time a little such that, ooh, are new decks coming? Wait a second. Did I know about this? Did you know about this? Uh, is this a new deck? Did we know about this? Can you buy cards? Has a new deck been released? Oh dear. I see. Okay. Just skimming. Yeah, I like how this deck looks. 5392, that's fine for a semi-rare, sure, or a rare. Rare, gotta be rare. Um, yeah, this all looks playable. Nothing screaming problems. Uh, yeah, cool, sure. Okay, and then we have another new deck, potentially. What is EC, do we think? EC. Alright, let's scroll down to level 10s. No idea what this is. Gar. I'm gonna search Gar Nawa and see what shows up. Gar Nawa. Auden Chronicle. Well, that's definitely EC. So what is Auden Chronicle? Never heard of this in my life. Which, if it's like an RPG that came out after 2010, it's current. Okay, yeah, there was no chance I was gonna have heard of it. All right, well, I didn't know about this. Anyways, my low effort project for the day is we're gonna rank FF8 cards. Starting with level 1, we'll see how far we get. I got this sheet ready to go to put in my rankings, and we're all gonna get mad about FF8 cards. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about sort of like how I first saw these cards, or like how I'm used to using them in FF8, because most of us have played a lot more with these cards in FF8 than on Triple Triad, not because we've played more on FF8, but because you tend not to play that much level 1 on Triple Triad. Well, you have to start here in FF8 so you get more used to the cards. And so the cards that really jump out at me from the starting cards you initially get in FF8 are Funguar and Red Bat, because I love that combo. You stick one of them in one, the top left square, with its ones facing out, and then when they capture, as they are very likely to do, you play the other one to recapture and lock it in, and it has ones facing out, so your total beast cards like Caterpillar just have captures everywhere. And I think this is one of the kind of most efficient starting strategies for being able to beat higher level players is to exploit the fact that they are capture bots. And if they are capture bots and there is no combo or rules in effect, the best strategy is to be locking in as many cards as possible. And the easiest way to do that is if the cards you have to lock in have ones. And this is what really trained me to be a weak corner player. A player who really likes weak corners, specifically as starters. Is to say, if I stick Red Bat in 1, they're going to take from 2. I'm going to play Funguar in 4. They're going to take from 5 because the AI likes taking from what I would think of as the lower number square. And suddenly they're up 6-4, but we have a lock in 7, we have a lock in 3. Life is great. And if we can ever lock in grabbing something with safety, that's wonderful, which is why another card I really like is Fastidicol in F, because if you start with Red Bat in 1 and you recapture with Funguar in 4 and they take in 2 and 5 respectively, Fastidicol in 7 with its 5 facing out is a card that has a real chance to be safe. And you'll notice of these level 1s, it is the only card that can do that. Gesper's 1 up means it cannot take that way, and no other card can actually take a 1 facing down with more than a 3 facing to the right, which is Blobra, and Fastidicol obviously much preferable. Um, but the real beast of the hand is always going to be Caterpillar sweeping. But Gala plays really well here too. Fastidicol is your best card for 7, Gala is your best card for 3, hopefully taking the card in 2, and hopefully it's 4 out is a powerful thing, and Caterpillar is your sweeper, and this is just a very decent game plan of Red Bat, Funguar, Gala, Fastidicol, and Caterpillar. I believe you have access to all five of those at the start. You might not have one of those. You might not have Fested Akalin. You might have like Gesper instead. But I always found that like a fun way of playing against it and a very thematic and consistent and pretty reliable way to play if you get first turn. So those are cards that appeal to me and speak to the power of one of the benefits of a strong corner is it can often have a really weak side, and that weak side has its uses too. First turn has last turn. First turn wants things to be easy to capture. Second turn often wants things to be difficult to capture. Though, of course, against the FF8 AI, the strategy works great on second turn. If they start in anywhere but one, you play in one, they'll start capturing, you can capture back and be first to lock in. The problem with it is the AI loves to start in one, and so often you have to put a card somewhere else. And so you want a hand that can play a weak corner somewhere else on the board, and the hand I just advocated is not very good at that. You might play Gala in 7, but you're not great at recapturing that. And your Funguar and your Red Bat are a little clunky. I think a better way to do it is to play either Funguar or Red Bat in 3, probably Red Bat, just because again, easier to take back. They are very likely to go in 2, and now you have lock-ins in any of 4, 5, and 6. And if available, your best option is to play Funguar or Red Bat in 4 because again, it has those ones facing out and when they take from 5, you can lock in from 7, or if they take from 7, you hopefully have a double capture in 5 and have a huge advantage. So it can still work on second turn, but usually one will be blocked because the FF8 bot is kind of funny, and instead you want to be going for 3. Um, so I quite like all the cards related to that. Gesper is a quite powerful card. 1154 is obviously really powerful for this level. There are only 2 cards that have more total power than 11. There is no card that has a better corner value than 5-4, but it has very little play against 1. And so many of the games against the stupid FF8 bot are oriented towards 1 that it ends up being a really clumsy card to play with and one I kind of only have negative feelings about. I feel like it's a trap card, even though by all rights it should be one of the better cards on this level. Um, so I'm actually gonna maybe go out on a limb and say Gesper. No, it's not my least favorite. So we come to the cards with 6s, and I don't really like the cards with 6s. Now I've actually used 2126 successfully in a tournament match in a I want to say TT. No, it wasn't TTAC. Maybe Triad Wars 14, maybe 15. Anyway, there was a long match I played versus Deli where Cockatrice was a huge part of my hand and really useful. So I have some affection for that, but I have very little affection for Blood Soul. Now you'll notice Blood Soul has less total value than Cockatrice. And if we compare Funguar to Bite Bug wouldn't work nearly as well for my weak corner strategy as Funguar. Bite Bug has more value total, is a better card total, but it's not as much better as it looks. The additional numbers can hurt in some ways. It means it is not a weak corner option, it is much more of a sweeper option. But that one up top makes it hard for it to sweep, especially given that if you're playing against FF8, the top row is the most likely row to fill up. So actually, like, that one's a real problem. There are 4 different level 1 cards with a 1 facing down, and it can't take any of them. Compared to Caterpillar, the 4-2-4-3, you might think, well, the 2's almost as weak. Okay, but there are 3 ones to the left it can take. There's a lot of actual targets for that too. Almost over a quarter of the cards on the level are hit by that too. You look at Bite Bug, its one is a much bigger weakness because it can't take 4 cards that almost anything else could take. In fact, only Gizzard and Gesper also can't take it. So I think that Bite Bug is actually not nearly as much better than Funguar as it looks. And actually, if you were creating an optimal hand here for beating the FF8 AI, I don't think it includes Bite Bug, and I do think it includes Funguar. So this is an example of more numbers, even when not considering stuff like plus wall that can use lower numbers to great effect. Higher numbers are not necessarily better. A 1188 might be better than a 1388 because being able to capture the ones really easily can be more useful than the slight capturing power of the 3. So, comparing Cockatrice to Blood Soul, Cockatrice is a higher number, but we know higher number doesn't necessarily mean better, though it certainly correlates with it. But the thing is, they still both have the same strength backside. The weakest weak corner you can make with Blood Soul is 2-1, and you have two different ways to do it. Cockatrice, it's also 2-1, and you also have two ways to do it. Cockatrice is just as good at being a weak corner as Blood Soul, and it has more capturing power. Cockatrice is a better card. So I really don't like Blood Soul. I think the 6 down tends not to have much play. You'll notice there is actually a 6 up. I think there are a lot of cards with high numbers facing up, specifically in the FF8 deck. I could be wrong, you could check this, but my suspicion is if you looked at the numbers in each direction, you'd see the most value facing up, especially in cards you see early in the game, right? Ifrit has a 9 facing up, Minimog has a 9 facing up, Siren has an 8 facing up. The early cards, especially, Zell has an 8 facing up, Quistis has a 9 facing up. All the kind of high level cards you get around the Balam area early, or have access to at some point kind of early, they all have high numbers facing up. Diablos is kind of the only one I can think of that doesn't. Yeah. So clearly some up weighting in general, and that means the 2-1-6-1 is not going to place that well. I'm going to put that last. I don't like Blood Soul. All right. Second to last, I think Gesper just doesn't play well in the main way you'll play with it. And so I'm going to put Gesper second to last. I think it is badly statted for exploiting the FF8 AI. If I was rating this for playing against players, I would rate it very differently. And as we get higher in level, I will be more and more thinking about how to use it versus humans. But again, the way most of us have played with these cards is this way. I'm not going to be remotely consistent with how I rank things. I'm just going off the top of my head. Now, the next thing I don't like is going to be Blobra. I'm going to put out Blobra next. This is a card that has always just felt really clunky to me. It isn't, I forget, I don't think it's a card you start with, though I could be wrong there. I'm probably wrong there. And it can recapture the 1-1 corners I want to be putting in the top left. But as a kid especially, I didn't like side to side cards. They weren't strong corners, they weren't weak corners. How can you use them? I hadn't yet understood you could, for instance, though obviously I'm known for not particularly liking this type of move, starting with Blobra in 6, and then having a card that could recapture in 3 and 9, hopefully safely, like Gala. But that requires them to never have anything higher than a 5 to the right. It's kind of clunky to pull that off. There are a lot of hands where you can't. It is a much less reliable game plan than just the weak corner in one strategy. And it never clicked for me. It never struck me. Another example would be Blood Soul in 2 with Caterchippeler as recapturer. But these plans are clunky, and they don't really work if the opponent has a high number facing up. And opponents at the start of FF8 have more powerful cards than you. So I never liked the side to side cards, and I think if you're playing against a capture bot, you will find corner cards with high in two directions, low in the other two, are gonna play better than side to side cards. And so coming out of playing FF8, you will be a very corner oriented player who slowly reorients to understanding these cards can have a lot of play. But without rules and against capture bots, they tend not to play very well. They're not good for exploiting that. And so I never really liked them. And I think on that note, I should knock out Geezard next. I never really found much use for Geezard. Now, I have affection for Cockatrice because, again, I ran it in an important tournament match and it was really good for me. But it is also not a card I found much use for, though you'll notice it can take back those 1-1 corners, and that's pretty useful. But I think Cockatrice goes out next. The thing about often you want access to the highest number available because that's going to guarantee captures. But when playing FF8, your opponents have access to higher level cards than you do anyway, at least at the start. Therefore, that 6 is not going to be the reliable sweeper it would be if it was facing other level 1 cards. Notice Blood Soul would not be a sweeper because Red Bat has the 6 up, or not a super reliable one, but Cockatrice would be except that your opponents are not limited to level 1 cards, and so it ends up not being that. It can take 2/1s facing out from 1, which is a really good trait. Uh, and it has a little more power than the 2/1/6/1, but it has very little power to double capture. So it can't be your sweeper, and the game has to be organized for it to have captures, and there's almost always something you'd prefer. For instance, if you start with Red Bat and 1 and you're looking for a card to recapture, Cockatrice will work, but Funguar will work better. And if you're looking for a card after, say, 1, 2, 4, 5 are filled to grab in 3, Cockatrice is going to be the more reliable card to take whatever's in 2. But Gala is much more likely to do so with safety, and the safety is the thing that's probably going to give you a better chance to lock in the win. And that's going to be worth more. I think Cockatrice ends up being a card that doesn't have much play, and I'm going to put it out in 7th. Yeah, you know what? I really like that starting hand I said. I'm going to eliminate Bitebug next. I know Bitebug is a really popular card. Is it 2 words or 1? 2 words. There were people who famously collected Bitebugs. There are people who were named things related to Bitebug. Bitebug is an extremely popular card, and this may be a controversial take. It's also just such a silly creation. But I don't think it plays well in essentially the meta of FF8 level 1. It doesn't face against up left, and it doesn't have useful numbers facing out from up left. The 3/3 is really strong and really clunky and hard to take. There is no card on this level that can take both 3s. Not a single one. So if it happens to do something early, you're not going to be able to recapture it that reliably and with specific cards. It is, and it's not a powerful enough corner that it's likely to be safe. Your 5/4 corners are probably not safe either, but have a much better chance to be safe. So it's not going to be safe, but it is going to be really hard to recapture, which leads me to think it should be your sweeper, but it's not a very good sweeper when the game is likely to be oriented towards the top of the board. And if your opponent starts, if the FF8 bot starts, it's going to go in 1, most likely, unless it has safety somewhere else. And then Bitebug is just never going to have clean play. So it never comes together in a no rules game oriented around 1 in the exploitative way you want. And that's why I don't like the Bitebug card very much on this level. Obviously, it's very good that they made cards with strengths in all kinds of different directions. This would be a very bad card if every card if every card faced up left. But as is, it is really useful to have more power up left. And all you need is 2s, because Funguar and Red Bat give you 1s facing out, but Bitebug doesn't have that. If it was a 2/3/3/5, it would be very good. One other thing to note is a really interesting choice as they designed level 1 is aside 2 cards, you could come up with the following rules for level 1. The highest number you can have is a 6, but if you have a 6, the next highest number is a 2. The second highest number is a 5. If you have a 5, you're allowed to have a 4. But the maximum power of a card is 11. So if you have a 5 and a 4, it has to be 2 1s at the end. If you have 2 4s, it has to be a 2 and a 1, or a 1 and a 1, right? The lowest power available on a card, I believe, is 10. Yeah, it's 10. So cards have power, total power 10 to 11. You can have a 6, but if you do, the other numbers are weak. And if you have a 5, you could have a 4, or you could have numbers like 3, 2, 1. With 2 exceptions, everything follows this. Bitebug gives you access to total power 12. Now, I don't think Bitebug is by any means broken on this rule set. 5/3/3/1s are a good inclusion on level 1, but it does change it slightly. And then there's Caterpillar, which is just much stronger. It doesn't break the maximum corner rules, but it has 13 total power, and it is the only card with at least a 1 in every direction. And that is very powerful in a world where every card has at least 1/1, often they have 2/1s, and that means there are a ton of 1s lying around for that 2 to take. If we saw in the other cards like a lot of 2/2/3/3s, then Caterpillar is not quite as dominant because suddenly it's not hitting nearly as many things as reliably, though its 4s are still great there, so maybe it actually would be just as good. And Caterpillar is total power 13, which is just really strong for the level. So I think there's a question of, would level 1 be better designed if there weren't cards like Caterpillar. I tend to be pro cards like Caterpillar. I tend to like the way that FF8 went in a direction of if you are balanced, you can have higher total number, while if you have a bigger corner, you are likely to have smaller total number. I think that tends to make for a good game. I think the high corners tend to be where more value is at. So giving away for the more balanced cards to catch up is a really nice feature, and I think Caterpillar is good design, though I might not have been willing to risk it if I was doing this myself. I might have said, okay, Bite Bug is the limit of what we're gonna do. Maybe we'll have a 1-3-3-5 and a 4-4-3-1, but we won't. But every card will have a 1, and no card will break 12 power. Caterpillar breaks it. I like Caterpillar. I'm gonna knock out Red Bat next. I like Red Bat because it is a weak corner and it fits my go-to simple weak corner strategy. But I don't like the 6 part. It's just so unusable in general play. Um, if you look at the directions the ones face, there are 3 ones facing up. There are 4 ones facing down. There are 3 ones facing left. And there are 4 ones facing right. So Red Bats 2 is actually pretty decent there, except that it has the one of the ones facing right, and you're probably not going to see multiples of it, but you, I guess, are allowed to run 5 of the same card in FF8. But yeah, I don't like the 6s. I like having a little more play on the other numbers. So I like Funguar more than Red Bat. Now we're down to Funguar, Gala, Festa de Calling, Caterpillar. I'm going to knock out Funguar next. I like it more, but I don't like it that much. I like the 4-4s and the 5-3s. They have a little more play. Now, Festa de Calling in many ways looks like a worse bite bug. And maybe it is. Maybe I'm just being silly. Because, but here's my case. Here's my case. You might think everything I said about bite bug applies more to Festa de Calling. It has less total numbers, which could be good, but could be clunky too. It has but it having slightly higher numbers than ones means it's going to be annoying and tough to recapture. No card can capture more than 2 of its strong corner, or more than 1 of its strong corner sides. Like if it is the 3-5 out facing, no card can capture both of those. If it is the 5-2, no card can capture both of those. Um, so it's like it's a little tricky to take. The 2 facing down means Gala can't take it, which is a big drawback. So it has Bite Bug's difficulty of being captured without quite being as strong. It has a 1 facing either up or left. Sorry that I'm totally stumbling over my words now. Which means it is not the reliable recapturer of Red Bat Funguar that you want. And yeah, it has all these problems. But here's the thing. If you go in 1, FF8 is likely to go in 2, which means you are likely to be the person who plays in 4, which means you will have a 1 facing down from 4, which means Festa de Calling plays really well because it will have the capture in 7 and it will have a 5 facing out. Compared to Bite Bug, first of all, it's going to have a lower number facing out if it captures in 3. It's going to have a 3 facing out. And second of all, because we don't control the card that landed in 2, it might have a 5 facing out or higher. And we might not have the capture with Bite Bug at all. So I think Festa de Calling just tends to play better as it happens. That said, all the complaints against Bite Bug, kind of still do apply. Hopefully I spelled this right. Festa de Calling. Yeah, cool. And I think it's got to go out there. We get to my top 2, Gala and Caterpillar. What I like about Gala is it is the only card that's a really good corner that also has a double capture against the 2 double 1/1s. And that's a really nice feature. But it's got to come second because I think Caterpillar is both the hint of good game design, of good balancing, of the more balanced cards can have access to higher total numbers than the higher corners, something we're going to continue to see and something I really like. So I think Caterpillar is going to be a sign of good things to come. But it also is just like, it's nice to play with a card that's just bulkier, just can hit more directions and give you something that if you hold on to for the late game has just way more potential to have double or even triple captures than other cards on the level. And it's just really hard to line that up with the other cards, and Caterpillar gets there way more reliably. And yeah, it's nice to kind of have this feel of here are cards I use early, either because they have high corners or because they have weak corners. And here are cards I can keep for late because I am confident they will have some capturing power. And Caterpillar is really the card you can have that late game faith in and have it relatively frequently pay off. Of course, like your first opponents can use like level threes, and if they're using, 5, 6, 2, 4, Caterpillar has one side it can take that. But that's still a lot more potential than almost any card has. And still, everything's going to have a weak side or two, or almost everything. And Caterpillar just has your chance to be that late game sweeper, especially if the opponent uses their better cards early, which they're very likely to do. So that's my level 1 ranking. I have no idea if this made for an interesting video. It's mostly talking about me exploiting the FF8 AI, but yeah, there's level 1. Weirdly, I have much weaker feelings about level 2 because you don't start with these cards, and the cards you collect with your initial cards are going to be kind of haphazard. But you're also likely, if you see a level 3 or a level 4, you're going to grab those early, and you're likely to not actually end up playing with the level 2s very much. Which is a sort of interesting way FF8 works, is because you have early access to some higher level stuff, you don't really touch level 2 much. So we'll see what the opinions are there next time on this thoroughly low effort style of video. All right. Be mad at me in the chat or whatever.